Greetings, my fellow psychonauts. I'm sharing, I'm going to start sharing a little bit of what my healing process has been like. I'm at a point right now where I'm getting ready to release some emotional trauma, is what I would describe it as. The last 2 days, my body has been very fatigued. I even called in, sick to work yesterday because my body was just, and I knew that was the sign for me that I was getting ready to release some more of this emotional trauma. And so August, I became aware that I have a defiance against authority because of my father. On the 8th, I ended up triggering myself by using 2 words that my father would use against me. On September 12th, I had an ayahuasca session. On September 30th, I had an emotional release. I did record this. I don't know if I'm going to share it. And I've been getting today a lot of memories, again, when I was 11 years old. And the memory that I got was the reason why I didn't want to show emotions. So let me explain a little bit about the environment that I grew up in. I grew up in this city called La Puente in California. It was it's a predominantly Hispanic neighborhoods. And these types of neighborhoods, it was very common to have drive-by shootings. Gang members were there. There were 2 particular gangs that were in my neighborhoods. The biggest one was Base Grande, or BG is what they would call it. And I did have family members that were also gang members. And these type of environments, you have to present this toughness. Because showing any kind of sign of weakness, you will be picked on, right? You would be looked down on for showing emotions. So at age 11, my antisocial traits were starting to explode like bomb, boom, boom, boom. Well, I had 2 older cousins that were gang members. And they happened to be staying over with us for the summer. I was 11 years old. So this was back in mid-80s, 1980s. And they were teenagers, maybe about 13, 15, 16 years old or something like this. I was 11. And my older cousin Chava, he told me, we were playing in the garage, and he told me, it's time we toughen you up so nobody messes with you. And they had me sit down on a chair. I don't know how many of the neighborhood boys, I used to be a tomboy. The boys used to be afraid of me because I behaved just like a boy. And so I don't know how many of the neighborhood's boys took part in this. And my cousin said to me, you can't cry, you have to take it. And he said, just because you're a girl, we're not going to take it easy on you. So I sat there, they split up in lines, and I have this really strange laughing mechanism. When I'm in pain, I tend to laugh. I had this since I was a little girl. I don't know if it's connected to my birth in some way, because as a teenager, my mom told me that when she gave birth to me, every time that she had a contraction, she would start to laugh. And she would say that the nurses would come by and look at her because she could hear screamings in all the other rooms. I was born in 1975, by the way. And she said that the doctor that was there in the delivery room, that he started singing to, and this caused my mom to, break out into like this hilarious like laughter. She just started to laugh, and I don't know if this connected or what, but I have this strange mechanism that if I'm in pain, I start to laugh. So then they started hitting me like punching me on my arms on both sides here. And as they were punching me, I was just sitting there laughing. And after they were done, I mean, I was in pain. I couldn't move my arms for like, I don't know how long, but I was in pain. But I was proud of myself. I was proud of myself because I didn't show any kind of emotion. So that's how I grew up believing that emotion was a sign of weakness. And I would say that psychedelics has made me softer, a lot softer, I would say. I always used to have this this really tough exterior because I wanted to be tough, right? And then after psychedelics, it was as if it started chipping away at that tough exterior that I had built around me. I mean, it's been maybe 3 years since I last realized that this was gone, this feeling of hardness around me. And it's really strange because you can learn to be more affectionate if you're not this kind of person with practice. At the nursing home that I worked with, I had all these elderly people that I could practice. And one lady that I see as my grandma, this is a lady named Charlotta. And she's missing a leg. And every time I see her, she calls me Sunshine. Every time I see her, I run to her like, Charlotta. And I give her a hug and a kiss, And that's not something formal me pre-psychedelics would have done. So I have definitely seen a lot of changes in the way that I approach people now. But anyways, that was the memory that was popping up today. And I just been looking at, I was rather violent when I was a teenager. And so I'm still understanding how my father played a role in the behaviors that I was displaying when I was a teenager and when I was a kid. I've been also trying to process the anger that I feel towards my father. Last year, I felt compassion for my sexual abuser, but I haven't reached that point yet with my father. So anyways, there's this pattern that I have in my healing. I start to feel tired, then I start feeling really emotional, like right now. So on September 30th, I released some emotional trauma. Today is the, what's today? Today is Friday, October 24th. It's 5:10 p.m. And so the last 2 days I was feeling very fatigued. I started to realize I was going to start hitting another low point where I was going to release this emotional trauma. I noticed with my body, it's very different than when I was healing my mind for the first 3 years. The healing on my body has been a completely different process. And it's been emotional, just emotional, and has to deal with rage. I realized after I got triggered last year that it's just been dealing with this rage, understanding the rage. How can I release it? So I'm still kind of understanding what else is it trying to tell me with this incident with my gangster cousins. I've been analyzing a lot of the behavior that I displayed at age 11. A lot of my memories keeps pointing me to this time period in my life. And some of the research that I had been looking into, antisocial traits tend to show up around this age period. So on September 30, when I was going through the first emotional release, there was a memory that kept popping up, and it was about my high school graduation. I looked at it at that day, and then I kind of I needed some time to process what I learned in that first release. And today I've been feeling really emotional, which is part of my process in healing. I already know the pattern of my healing. I'm not saying that you're going to go through the same thing if you go through psychedelic therapy. I'm just sharing what my healing process looks like, because, people tend to romanticize psychedelics as this beautiful experience. But for me, it hasn't been pretty. It hasn't been pretty at all. The fact that I'm here sitting in front of a camera showing emotion shows how far I've come. And deprogramming the beliefs about vulnerability that I had growing up in the environment I grew up in. If I would have seen a man cry, I would have been disgusted. Really, like formal me, if I had seen a man cry, I would have been disgusted, and I would have been thinking, aren't you man? Aren't you a man? Because that's how hard I was really hardened. I was one of those hardened victims. I had a really difficult time trusting people. I mean, how could I trust people when I couldn't even trust my own family? So that's one thing that changed with psychedelics, trusting people again. And one of the ways that I was able to begin trusting people was by setting boundaries. I used to just let people do what they wanted because I had no boundaries. So anyways, I'm getting ready to do another emotional release. And once again, my high school graduation memory popped up again today. And I think it's popping up because I'm going to be graduating in May of next year. And I'm going to be graduating with distinction. This means that there's going to be something stating in my school records and in my degree that I have distinction. Because I have a 4.0 grade point average at the moment. And I expect to keep that damn GPA until I graduate. I have 4 more classes to go. And so the memory that's been popping up, this was in June of 1994. And I was graduating high school. And I was graduating with honors. And in my school, when you were graduating with honors, you had to wear a white robe to distinguish yourself from everybody else. Maybe a few weeks prior, I had gone to my father's business, and I personally gave him an invitation to my graduation. He took the invitation, and he said I'll think about it. And I was really proud of myself, because in the neighborhood I grew up with, it wasn't uncommon to see a lot of pregnant girls, teenage mothers in my neighborhood. I had been accepted into the university into an honors program. So everything was looking great for me academically, right? Everybody expected me to do something great in my life. But I don't want to. I don't want to detour from the story. Other memories So when I'm going through the emotional release, I start getting this overload of memories. So as I'm talking here, it's like other memories are just kind of popping up. And since there's so many kind of overlapping each other, I kind of have to stop and see which one of these memories I want to look at. So anyways, going back to my graduation story, I invited my father, and because I wanted him to be proud of me, right? So the day of graduation, it was in the daytime, and we had a football field, not soccer, American football field. And so they were holding the ceremony out in the field, and they had bleachers where the guests were sitting. And as we were lining up to start going up, having our names called up on the stage, I remember I looked over into the bleachers and I was scouring the crowd to see if I could see my father. And I didn't realize that my mom took a picture at that moment. And the really fucked up thing is that my mom, once in a great while, she'll bring up this picture. And I was there last year, and she she took out the picture that she took of me looking out into the bleachers. Well, my mom believes that I was looking for her, so every time she reminds me of the picture, she tells me in Spanish, "Oh, mija, do you remember when you were looking for me out in the and you couldn't find me?" And I don't have the heart to tell her that I was actually looking for my father. And I hope she never sees this video because I don't want her to know. So anyways, I realized that he wasn't there. And of course, since I was this tough person, I suppressed the emotion. So this is what my healing looks like when I'm ready to release trauma. I start getting really emotional. Emotions was something that was very difficult for me to process. That's why I had a binge eating disorder, because food for a temporary moment gave me a sense, gave me a good feeling about myself, because it allowed me, by eating, it allowed me to not have to feel anything. So what I've been noticing with my healing process, especially with the healing of my body, is that it has been very emotional. Back in the early 90s, I had a friend who was like big time into drugs. He had a goatee, like hippie looking kind of guy, really cool guy named Renee. And I remember one day he had a baggie of mushrooms. He was kind of, I remember I took just a little piece. I just chewed it in my mouth just to try it. And if I ever wanted to know what shit tastes like, that's what I would describe my first time tasting psilocybin. Well, anyways, that was the only time that it wasn't enough to get me high. It was just a tiny bit just to taste what they were like, not to get high or anything like that. But I did try LSD maybe like 4 times, but they were always these horrible, as if I was in some kind of horror movie type of experiences, that I pretty much said, fuck this hippie shit. And didn't resonate with me. Had no idea that in the future I would be all like, yeah, advocating for psychedelic therapy and all this stuff. I didn't care for psychedelics. But anyways, I was 43 years old when I really had my first, I took some magic truffles, about like 22 grams of magic truffles. And oh my God, those little motherfuckers kicked my ass emotionally. It was the most excruciating experience I ever felt. It was excruciating because it was forcing me to feel. And you have to understand, I was a person that did not want to feel. And I was, oh my God, I was on the floor in a fetal position, just like screaming. My kids were not there. They were at that time, they were still visiting their father. So they were over there for the weekend. So it was just me in the flat. I was just screaming to stop this. So I experimented a little bit more with the magic truffles, but I was not ready for mushrooms. One thing I noticed with mushrooms is if you really want to start getting in touch with your emotions, mushrooms definitely are the ones to go to. I would say maybe the last 2 years I've been, like making peace, doing my little white flag with the mushrooms. But they really helped me in releasing a lot of emotional stuff that I had been storing for decades. And so anyways, this is what my emotional release looks like. I tend to get really emotional. I start to cry a lot. I usually last only, like, I'm already going through the release right now. Tomorrow I'll start feeling fatigue for the next few days. And then I start kind of picking back up. I don't know if the process is still done. I'm still going through it. That's why, since I'm still not sure in which area of research I wanted to get into, I thought it would be important to start being open of what the healing process has been like, what I'm going through as I start noticing the changes in my body. Fatigue is one thing I noticed prior to me doing the emotional release, and then fatigue afterwards. When the memories start, so the memories has started earlier today. I'm pretty sure as the night progresses, they're going to start being a bit more rapid. Then I will start getting migraines at some point. So I'm just at the start of the releasing. So anyways, going back to the memory again, one thought that came up when I did the first emotional release on September 30th was this thought about inviting my father to my graduation. I'm going to be graduating in Arizona State University. So I'm going to be in Phoenix, Arizona next year for my graduation. But then when I thought about that on that day, I was thinking, and what happens if he doesn't show up again? Is it going to derail my healing and set me back? Or do I want to take that risk? And again, today I've been thinking about it. At some point, I'm going to be sharing the generational trauma from my father. I do feel that I am getting close to reaching that compassion for this man. But I'm still not quite there. One memory that I just got, right? The past 2 days, this memory has been popping up. And then it came up just now again as I'm talking. So the memory I just came up again was I was 5 years old. At this time, we were living in Echo Park, California. We had rented a small house and it was a lot of family members. I don't know, maybe like 10 family members in this small house. I mean, I didn't have my own bed until I think I was about 7 years old when I had my own bed. And on this particular day, all the adult males were gone. It was my mom. I don't remember which other relatives. I remember there were other younger family members there. My grandmother was there, my maternal grandmother. This woman was a very petite. She was a size 0, a petite woman, but had a very strong character. The women from this generation, my grandmother was from the silent. You talk about the boomers. My grandmother was from the silent generation. These women were really hardened women. I don't recall my grandmother ever hugging any of us. She was an alcoholic, a belligerent alcoholic. And the history of my grandmother on my mother's side is very interesting. My grandmother came actually from a very wealthy family in Mexico. They all used to own a 3-story mansion up to the early 80s, and it was in sharp contrast to my. I'll talk about my family's history at some point when I talk about generational trauma. I still don't know which direction I'm going to be taking this teaching that I don't know, observation, whatever. But I felt it was important to really show what healing can look like for some people. So anyways, going back to the memory, I was 5 years old. And up to this point, my father had been making a lot of death threats. And for some reason, I did find out last year why my father disliked me. It had nothing to do with me personally. It had to do with the issues he had from the family. But when I talk about generational trauma, but he would always, my mom would say that he would specifically always name me when he was mentioning about killing us. And my father showed up at the house, and my grandmother went outside to confront him. Next thing I remember was these blood-curdling screams. I have never heard anybody scream like this before. And then there was silence. We didn't hear my grandmother. Everybody at that point who was in the house just started scattering, trying to find a place to hide because my father was coming inside. I remember my mom opening this closet door, and there was one of my family members. I still to this day cannot remember who they were, but I remember their eyes were really wide open. They were so frightened. I just remember the eyes, like how wide they were and the fear that they had. So we went into the hallway, this little hallway, and there was a closet in the middle of the hallway. And we went inside this closet. Now this closet had slits, wooden slits, so I could still see outside. And my father was standing right in front of the door. And I remember he was holding it was either a crowbar or a car tire iron, one of these tools for the tires. And the next thing that I remember, we were outside and my mom was pushing me over this brick wall. There was an alley that ran right behind this brick wall, and we took off running. My mom and I took off running. I don't remember if my little brother was with us, but I remember we were running down this alley. And I asked my mom when I was older what happened when we were in the closet. And she said that she had to cover my mouth, and she had whispered to me in Spanish to stay silent because he was right. Because she said he was standing right in front of the door. I'm like, yeah, Mom, I know, I remember. And then she said that one of my uncles, who must have been about 15 years old at the time, he knew that we were in the closet. And he ran out and he told him, we're not there. And this distracted my father. So he went into the other room to look for us because he didn't believe my uncle. And she said when her brother distracted my father, that we managed to run out and escape through the back, and we were able to go over the brick wall. And my father ended up breaking my grandmother's arm. She was okay, but he gave her a pretty good beating. I do understand after, so almost, let's see, about 3 years ago, I reconnected with my paternal side of the family. The last time my family members had seen me was when I was 16 years old. So this had been, for some, they hadn't seen me in 30, 35 years. And here I am in my late 40s, reunited with my family. As I started reconnecting with my family, I started wanting to understand the history of our family, particularly the trauma. And I began hearing not just about my grandmother, but stories about my father as well. And so I understand, I have put the pieces together, and I have a very good understanding of my father's traumas. I don't know if I would ever talk to this man, but if I ever do, I would like to understand what happened to him. Why did he develop this hatred towards women? I do know the person that I knew why. I know the woman in our family that caused this hatred, but I do not know. I don't have the reasons why. What did my great grandmother do to him? I'll get into that. That's a crazy story with my father. I do feel that I am starting to reach a point that I'm feeling compassion. Like right now, I am starting to feel a little bit of compassion, talking about a little bit about his trauma and what my relatives have told me that I have in my mind. And I've been dealing, since I got triggered and my defiance against authority came out in August, I've been trying to understand the rage that I feel towards my father. I mean, there's so many things that are going in my mind, but I really don't have yet an answer that satisfies me why I feel this rage towards him, this anger. I sometimes think maybe because he wasn't in my life. As a teenager, when I was 16 years old, I remember, all these memories have just been coming up recently, by the way. And I remember that I would pace around in my room really angry, just thinking about my father and thinking of ways I could torture this man. With all that rage that I felt back then, if he had been present, I mean, I had so much rage towards this man that I would think of ways of torturing and killing him. That's how much anger I had towards my father. I hated him. So anyways, this is where I'm at so far in the healing. So this started in August. We're now in late October. And I'm getting ready to release some more of this. I still don't know how long this process is going to take with the releasing this anger that I feel towards my father. I have released a lot, don't get me wrong. I'm not thinking about him like torturing or anything like that. I was just remembering the rage I felt at age 16 pacing around my room. And I'm still processing that rage. I did release a lot through the ayahuasca session. I did record that session. I don't know if I'm going to be sharing that because I started to scream. And I still haven't seen the video. I don't feel that I'm ready to look at it yet. Even I was with two guys when I had this session. And my friend said to me that maybe it might not be a good idea to share it. And I'm just thinking, how bad is it? And I had sent the video so my friend can look at it. My best friend, I've known her for over 30 years. And to this day, she hasn't gotten back. Like, she has not mentioned that video at all. I'm going to be seeing her next week. I'm going to be flying out to the U.S. I'm going to spend some time with my best friend. But yeah, this is where I'm at so far. I'm already used to my process. Since I already know the healing of my process, I'm not afraid of it. I always feel really good after going through everything and the memories, analyzing them, observing them, releasing the emotions as I think about the memories. But yeah, so far it's just, again, in my mind right now is this thought of, should I invite him to my graduation next year? And I would have to talk to my mom as well, because I don't know how comfortable she would be being around him. You know, this man did some horrific things to her. I'm surprised. Honestly, I'm surprised he didn't kill her. Even one of my father's older brother, his half brother, he was the reason why my mom left, because he warned her several times. He was also the one that protected her when he saw my father getting violent towards her. And he was the one that convinced her that if she did not leave my father, mind you, this is his brother. This is my father's brother telling my mom that if she did not leave my father, he was going to kill her, because he was a very dangerous man, explosive anger, which I, of course, realize now that I end up also getting some of this behavior when I was younger. I don't want anyone to think that my shadow's always popping up or anything like this. It's actually very rare for me to get triggered. Really rare. Authentic me, authentic Cynthia, is very kind, very understanding, very patient. And only just last year, I started getting to know my shadow after I had that major trigger. I mean, it's very rare for me to get triggered, but when I get triggered, I realize now there is a whole different energy to my shadow. If I'm kind, understanding, and patient, my shadow is the complete opposite of that. But as I got over the negativity of my shadow, I've been confronting a lot of my antisocial behaviors as a child and as a teenager and up to my early adult years. And what I'm noticing in my pattern of that I was always when I got violent, it was always with a man. So I should have known. I should have known when I had this defiance against authority, but I was really surprised when I recognized it this August. And looking at my behavior, what I was thinking, what I was feeling, how I was behaving, is giving me a greater understanding of how much of the behavior I started displaying as well as part of my shadow from my father. I'll definitely have to do a generational trauma video because I have a crazy story on both sides of my family. Absolutely insane. But anyways, this is what my healing has looked like so far since last year. Since March of last year, this is what my healing process has looked like. So anyways, if there's anything else I notice, I'll share again. Till next time, my fellow psychonauts. Where we are, happy tripping.